Welcome back, everyone. So, heaven is spiritual. It's a spiritual reward. It's not a physical reward. Why is it a spiritual? What's more than physical? Because the reality is, even though we act materialistic, but spirituality is a lot more powerful than something physical. And I will give you a proof to that. Okay. We all like food, right? So picture the most delicious food that you have. If it's a steak, it's ribs, a barbecue, whatever it is, right? How many people will dance after eating their most delicious food? How many? You. All right, one. I've never danced after a delicious meal, I'll tell you the truth. No physical experience has ever caused dancing. On the other hand, there is something that causes people to dance, but it's spiritual. It's called music, right? You hear music, you can't touch music, but music makes you want to dance. It wants to gets you into the mood. Let's dance. So spiritualness is more powerful. So that's what heaven is. Heaven is a spiritual reward, and according to Kabbalistic teachings, it's actually the actual mitzvah is your reward. So what happens? You did a mitzvah. Right? What did you accomplish? You don't know. You don't see it. In heaven, you actually feel the energy of your mitzvah. You feel what you learned. You feel what you did. You feel you gave tzedakah, right? So you feel good. I helped someone. I feel good. I gave charity. But in heaven, you actually experience what you've accomplished. So that is what heaven is. And there's different levels of heaven. You can't put someone that the reality is you got to earn heaven. So a person may not have sinned, but you also may not have done so much good. A person that spent their whole life working hard and putting themselves out for others and doing mitzvahs, there's a very special place in heaven for them. So there's different levels and different plateaus of heaven. There's a place for martyrs, someone that gave their life because they were a Jew, an Israeli soldier that gave his life. He might not have been very observant or very religious, but he gave his life for the Jewish people. The person goes into heaven. So that's what we have for the reward. Now, do Jewish people believe in hell? Well, try coming here when it's 120 degrees. You'll believe very quickly. But I want to tell you something. Something has always perplexed me when I tell people, yeah, of course we believe in hell. They say, well, isn't that a Christian idea? Isn't this? And I have two questions when they tell me that. The first is that if you don't believe in it, that means you don't believe that there's any accountability for your actions. So a person that lived a life that's uncouth and a wife beater and a thief and a mobster and a murderer and a thief and a swindler, that person, as well as the tzaddik, ends up in the same place because there's no hell. That doesn't make sense to me. So that's the first. Just logically, why wouldn't there be hell? The second thing is that people can't say, oh, isn't that a Christian idea? Well, that's like saying, isn't prayer a Christian idea? Isn't the Sabbath a Christian idea? If somebody comes and says, oh, Sabbath, that's a Christian idea. Yeah, it's a Christian idea they took from the Jews. That's where it comes from. They didn't want to be exactly like the Jews. The Jews celebrate on Saturday, so they had to do something different. So they made their holiday on Sunday. So we get 2 days off. We get a weekend out of it. And we get a day that, at least in Massachusetts, you can't buy liquor till 1 o'clock. Because that's their Sabbath. Okay. But we definitely believe that there's accountability for your sin. If you did something wrong, there's a price to pay. Now, the good news is a person can repent. It doesn't mean that every person has to go to hell. You could repent, you could this. But to say that there's not going to be some type of accountability for your actions, I would say is ridiculous. Why would I do anything right? If there's no heaven, there's no hell, what would be the motivation? I'm not saying that the person's motivation in life is only for heaven or only to avoid hell or only to earn heaven. It's not a good way to live. To do things only for the reward or only because you don't want to get punished. There are people that live like that. It's not a beautiful way, but certainly to just not even consider that an incentive at all, to just eradicate the whole concept, I think the world would run a lot differently. There's a God in the world, and there's a reward, and there was a rabbi once that said, don't be like a servant that serves for the reward. That's what he said. Don't be like a servant that does it for the right reason. And one of his students misinterpreted it and said, oh, that must mean there is no reward. That's not what he said. He said, don't do it for the reward. He said, oh, there's no reward. And he went off and he caused tremendous, tremendous harm, not just to himself, but to the whole Jewish nation. So there is a reward and there is a punishment. Obviously, if you could do things for the right motivation, a relationship with God is like a marriage. If our marriage would be based only on the reward, okay, my dear wife, I did this for you. Can I be repaid now? Can you make my favorite supper tomorrow night? Or why didn't you do this? Oh, because she's going to punish me. That's not a very good relationship, right? It can only last so long. Fear of punishment and fear of rewards. So our relationship with God should be on a more higher and a more spiritual relationship. However, the incentive should still be there to try to do things to keep us in line, as they say. Any questions? No? So quiet? All right. Now we get to another topic which is very Kabbalistic and very hard to pin down. It's for the most part completely Kabbalistic, even though there are some vague references in Kuzari and Saadia Gaon. Seems like he avoided the subject, but Nachmanides. But for the most part, everything that we know about this subject is based on Kabbalah. And that is the subject of reincarnation. How it works and who gets reincarnated and everything, most of the information that we have is based on a book by Rabbi Chaim Vital. Rabbi Chaim Vital was the primary student of Rabbi Isaac Luria, the Arizal. The Arizal is what we probably could refer to as the father of modern Kabbalah. So there's Kabbalistic teachings that go before the Arizal, like the Zohar and other types of things, but the Arizal made Kabbalistic teachings popular. The Arizal himself never authored any books. He never put anything into writing. His primary student, Rabbi Isaac Luria, his primary Rabbi Chaim Vital, did put it into writings. And he called it gates. The gates of holiness, gates of this, gates of lights, gates of other types of things. And he has one called the Gate of Reincarnation, which speaks exclusively, and that's today, when people discuss reincarnation, they base all the information on that book. And what does it say in that book regarding reincarnation? So, most souls today are recycled. Every single soul, basically, today is a recycled soul of in the past. It is not clear if reincarnation is a punishment that there's hell for. Reincarnation is more of a consequence. You see, we're put into this world to make the world a better place, and we have a divine mission to elevate places where we are. We have to elevate that area or that neighborhood, that's whatever thing. And many times you don't accomplish our mission. So what do we got to do? We got to go back a second time. So how do you know what your mission is? Well, we don't. That's why you always got to try to take advantage of situations and do the right thing when the opportunity presents itself, because you don't know what is going to be your divine mission. However, it says in the book of reincarnation that there are sometimes something person finds exceedingly challenging, or you continuously are confronted with that challenge. That could be that was the one thing that you are missing in your previous lifetime, and therefore you have to come back again. There's a lot of discussion about different sages that came back as this one, or they had the soul of this one, and therefore they had this tendency. In the Bible, there was a fellow called Pinchas, who was known as a zealot. And according to the Kabbalistic teachings, Elijah had the same soul as Pinchas. A very other well-known, very fascinating Kabbalistic concept is, in the book of Genesis, there's a lot of stories about brothers. In the first Torah portion, there's a story about brothers. One killed the other. The second Torah portion, there's a story about brothers. One was good, two are good, one was bad. Last week's Torah portion, we discussed about brothers, Isaac and Ishmael. And it continues in this week's Torah portion. You have another two brothers, Jacob and Esau. They didn't get along. Joseph and his brothers, we all know what happened over there. All the brothers in the Bible seem to hate each other. Comes the book of Exodus, all of a sudden you have two brothers. You have Moses and you have Aaron. Aaron was the older brother. Who is the one that got all the credit? The younger one. Who's more famous, Moses or Aaron? Moses, right? Moses, the most famous Jewish leader probably, is Moses. So Aaron, you would think, would be jealous. He wasn't. So Kabbalistic teachings tell us that Moses and Aaron, they were a reincarnation of all these brothers that didn't get along in the book of Genesis. Finally, God found a pair of brothers that got along, that weren't jealous of each other. So that's the concept of souls getting recycled. And there's a lot different discussions about why you get recycled or how you do it. What happens when the soul finishes its mission? Does it get married? Every person has a soulmate, right? You have the first wife, the second wife, the first time you went around, things like that. There's a lot of discussion about that. When there's going to be the resurrection, when the dead are going to come to life. Which body is the soul going to be in? Is it going to be the first one, the second one, the third one? There's discussion about that. In general, the idea is that there are different parts of the soul. So you can elevate one part of the soul, and that part will remain with the first person. And then the second part of the soul that got reincarnated, went into the soul of the other person, this unique individual. They get that soul gets now a new partner in life and things of that nature. There have been cases, I think we discussed this briefly, of people that were born, even in our generation, with information that was indicative that they were alive in other generations. They recalled events and things that they could not have known. There was actual evidence of that in the non-Jewish world. There was a kid that was born, I don't remember when it happened, fairly recently, in the 90s, I believe. He started to recall information about World War II. And he used to get frightened from airplanes. And apparently, they tracked him down or something, that he was a reincarnation or something of an actual airline pilot. He was able to mention, a little kid, able to mention flight information from a World War II pilot. Things that there's no way that a little kid would ever know. And the kid had a fear when he saw airplanes. So he had a fear of bombing. That means he experienced it. And I don't know what the conclusion was. I came across it. It's a true story. So there are cases like that do exist. So just to sum up, there are a lot of things out there, more than meets the eye in the spiritual world. What is our approach to a lot of these things that we discussed? Our approach is it says you have to be sincere with God. What does it mean to be sincere? We don't have to start looking into the supernatural. We should try to live our life based on what Judaism tells us. We hope for the best. The Torah itself gives a promise that if you do what I ask, you go in God's statutes, then He'll bless you. That's the way that God made the world. So we don't have to look for the magic of the world, the supernatural of the world. We should try to live our life based on Torah mitzvahs, and you'll see that a lot of times you will experience in your own life things that you'll see, oh, this was the hand of God. I really feel that God guided me in these circumstances. Any questions on our subject? We covered a lot of stuff. Yes, Leah?
Dinosaurs.
We didn't touch upon that?
We didn't do dinosaurs yet.
Oh. Well, okay. The dinosaurs exist according to Judaism. And the answer, it seems, the overwhelming answer to that is yes. Why? Because there's evidence of it. You could touch dinosaurs, you could feel it. They found large bones. It wasn't humans. Now, how do you reconcile the fact that dinosaurs seem to be thousands upon thousands of years old and millions of years old, and the world is only 5,781 years? So that's a question regarding a lot of things in the world. How do you reconcile the age of the world? But I'll tell you something interesting. It's food for thought. But let me just finish one more thing about dinosaurs. The Bible itself says that God created large sea creatures. It doesn't say fish, sea creatures. So dinosaurs are basically lizards, if I understand correctly. They're in the crocodile family. Those are sea creatures that are just that live on land. So dinosaurs are basically related to crocodiles and alligators and lizards. They're just much, much larger. So the Bible actually mentions that God created large sea creatures. And it seems that they were destroyed in the flood, which would explain their disappearance. People say, how did they disappear? There was a meteor, there was this, there was that. The simple answer is that there was a flood, and it killed out the dinosaurs and left the smaller animals in the world. But regarding the age of the world, I'll tell you something interesting. I'm not a scientist, and there's many rabbis that have written extensively in trying to reconcile the age of the world with what appears to be much, much older. There's Lucy and different types of bones and things that they found that indicate that they're millions of years old. So there's different ways of analyzing it. But I'll tell you something interesting. You have a world that, according to scientists, or some scientists, is millions upon millions of years old. Hundreds of millions, or whatever amount that they say. Isn't that interesting? The written history. There's nothing written that's more than the age of the world that the Torah says. There is nothing. There's no king. You can't say, 10,000 years ago there lived this king. There's nothing. There's zero written. So say, there were Neanderthals, there were this, there were that. There should be something of some type of history. There was a kingdom, there was a this, there was a that. There's zero. There's no hieroglyphics. There's no historical accounts of any sort that precede the Jewish date of creation. So if somebody comes and says, the world is millions and millions, well, history only is around 5,700 years old. That's how long history is. So you could claim a lot of things, but I think it's up to them to prove it more than it is on Torah to prove it. And again, there's a lot of discussions on that are beyond the scope of today's class. But in short, do we believe in dinosaurs? We see dinosaurs. If we see them, we believe in them. Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you guys and those that are online and YouTube and everyone that's watching this. A couple of public service announcements. Number one is next Sunday. Next Sunday, 3 to 6, we're having a pop-up deli and grill. Should be very, very good food. As I mentioned Saturday, I actually tasted every single one to make sure that you're getting quality food. Someone's got to do it. It's a tough job. Someone's got to do it. I volunteered. It's good stuff. The second thing is our services are not going to be this Saturday, but a week from Saturday will be services.